Welcome back to another episode of NBA by Jellyman, episode 8. This week we cover off the Week 7 review, team and player consistencies as per usual, deep dive into insights, a few teams that have bounced back across the last few weeks, as well as obviously a Week 8 preview. Topic 1 will actually be a Sports Hits by Jellyman example day. So as mentioned, obviously NBA by Jellyman is a segment of Sports Hits by Jellyman where we provide recommendations, stats, tips and analysis day to day. So one email usually comes in the night before with stats and insights, and then 2 emails in the morning, one potentially around sort of 5 a.m. I'm up in Brisbane, so 5 a.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is about 6 a.m. If you're in daylight savings. And then another one about 7:30, 8 o'clock with sort of later games as well, sort of covering up the day of games, usually about 8 to 12 recommendations. All recommendations come with an analysis and then also a stat and insight behind them as well, and a bit more of a reasoning. But topic 1 is going to be, an example day. Obviously today was actually quite a good day. We hit about plus 10.56 units, but this was the day in total. So the first email that got sent out had 3 tips on there, which was the Denver Nuggets and the Pelicans. I had Zion Williamson 30 plus points at $3.05 via Sportsbet. That was 1 unit. That obviously lost. But the reasoning behind that one was there was no Jones, no Ingram. Met and Zion had to dominate the 3 and 4 position, as well as CJ's just getting back into his game. And Zion has actually scored 30 plus points in his last 2 games. And then in 3 of his last 5 games. And against the Nuggets, he's actually in 2 of his last 3 games scored 30 plus points. So there was a bit of a reasoning behind that one. Obviously it lost, but we can't help that one. Jamal Murray, we had him tip number 2, him and Jokic together, over 19.5, with Jokic 8 plus assists. Jokic's 1 hit. Murray missed out by 1.5 points or 2 points, as you like to say. That was paying $270 as a 2-leg multi. We just had 1 unit on that one. And then the reason behind that one was the Pelicans have struggled defending guards most of the season, obviously coming up against one of the best 1-2 punchers being Murray and Jokic. Murray actually had 20 plus points in his last 4 games, and Jokic 8 plus assists in 4 of his last 5 games. So there were 2 reasons behind that one. And then our third tip for the first email, actually all wrong, 0 of 3 in the first email, but hey, happy to admit it because the next email, well, it improves from there. But our third tip was the Suns minus 1.5 with Devin Booker 30 plus points. Booker had 41, 51, and 44 in his last 3 games. And then against the Spurs, it actually had 28, 48, 23, 27, 15, but 35, 37, 38, that was without Paul in the team back in the day when the Suns were playing against the Spurs quite a while ago. And then we also had, the reason why we had the Suns minus 1.5 and not their line, which was minus 10.5. Looking back, obviously should have taken it, but they actually had been super inconsistent on the road, and coming out of home, we were just 50-50 on whether they could improve. And the Spurs losing 10 in a row, we thought they would show a bit more fight, but it wasn't there. So that was the first email we sent out anyway, just so you guys get an idea. That one was at 5:35 this morning, my time, so 6:30 in the morning for daylight savings. The second email that came out, that one came out at 8 o'clock. Obviously that's 9 o'clock everywhere else, daylight savings time. Tip number 4, which was a loss unfortunately as well, but that's 0 and 4 for the day, but then it obviously improved. So we had Tatum over 29.5 points. He's actually had 29 plus points in 4 of his last 5 games and was average his last game. So we're like, bang, bounce back game against the Nets. He actually scored 54 points against the Nets back in March of this year as well, and then 30 points back in February. So had some pretty good games against Brooklyn. He actually scored 29 points. Then we had Mitchell over 25.5 points and Beal 24.5 points. Mitchell finished with 23 and was average in the Garden. He'd actually scored 32 and 36 in his last times at Madison Square Garden. And against the Knicks, 38, 36, and 32 in his last 3 matchups. Beal obviously got injured, so only finished on, I think, 2 points. So that was that one. Now we move into the good part where we obviously hit some winners. So we had the Celtics minus 2.5 at 193 on Sportsbet for 3 units. Then we had Kevin Durant over 27.5, 5 plus rebounds and 5 plus assists. That was at 255 on Bet365. We had 2 units on that one. We have quite an in-depth analysis for the Boston-Brooklyn game. The stuff to look at, and this was my quick synopsis, was Boston is shooting incredibly well for the field at just under 50%, and then just over 40% from three. And then they love to team rebound as well. Obviously, not having Williams there, they have to team rebound along with Tatum, Brown, Horford, obviously man in that center position. But then also when Smart does play, he didn't play today. He also likes to jump on the boards. But then the Nets on the flip side, they're terrible defensive rebounding team, and then also struggled to close out against threes. So that's a different equation. The equation we put together was the Celtics will get plenty of open shots because the Nets struggled to defend the 3-point line, and then the pick and roll that will pulls Claxton out of the paint, which means easy buckets for the likes of Tatum and Brown. Then obviously we had Kevin Durant been super of late, had a quiet game last game on the point scoring wise, so we knew he'd bounce back, so that was quite an easy tip. Tip 7 was Jaren Jackson Jr., 20 plus points at 250, just at 1 unit on that one. But he's had 20 plus points in 5 of his last 6 games. And the Bigs versus Detroit, Wood 25 points, Randall 36 points, and Mobley 20 points. So Jackson Jr. to have a big game, and he did finish with 22 points. Then we had the Cavs and the Knicks. So we had Mobley for a double-double. He finished with 11 points and 10 rebounds. So that was 186, just a sort of smaller one, but one to sort of tick off. That was at 1.5 units. And then moved to the Lakers. Unsure why they were underdogs within such a form they are, with Davis and LeBron both playing well. They were paying $220 on Bet365. We had them 2.5 units. We also had Anthony Davis, who had a monster game with 55 and 17. But we had him for 25 plus points and 12 plus rebounds. We mainly sort of covered off in the Lakers game that these are the games they need to win with teams below 500. So obviously Washington at 11 and 12. LA have won their last 3 road games, and we sort of saw them as the better team with their full raft of players back at the moment, which means they're finding some consistency and expect them to keep on moving ahead. Our last one for the day was the Blazers game. So we just had Portland head-to-head. Prior to, we saw that Lillard and Hart were listed as a game time decision, so 50-50. We took the risk, them at 171 at 2.5 units on Sportsbet. Sportsbet actually had a bonus as well, where I think they were 196 that I got them at as well, so that's a handy little one. But the Pacers had lost 3 of the last 4 on the road, and traveling out to Portland isn't easy, so we'd like to play Blazers there. But that's essentially a bit of an overview of what the day looks like in terms of the emails that get sent out from us. So that's obviously Sports Tips by Jellyman. Jump on jellyman.co if you want to learn a bit more, or feel free to message me on Facebook. I'll put all the links in the show notes so anyone can click through there. But we'll get to the fun stuff for the week. So week 7 review, winners, losers, and some highlighted stats. We'll kick off with Tuesday. So last Tuesday there were 10 games. The Sixers beat the Hawks behind 30 points from Embiid in his return from injury. The Wizards beat the Wolves 142-127. High scoring, as we've seen with a lot of the Wizards games of late. Same as the Wolves without Towns moving forward. Kristaps Porzingis had 41 points. Edwards 29 points. The Celtics smashed the Hornets by 35 points. Smart had 15 assists. There was actually no Tatum in that one, so Brown played well as well. The Nets beat the Magic just by 7 points, but Katie had 45 points on the way to a pretty big week before that Raptors game the other day. The Raptors beat the Cavs in Toronto. So Siakam 18 points and 11 rebounds in his return from injury. So you're seeing some of those players that got injured sort of early November, mid-November start to come back now. Hopefully Philadelphia are the same. Obviously earlier in the piece with Harden and Maxey, hopefully back soon. The Nuggets beat the Rockets. Jokic 32-12-8. Another impressive game. He'll sort of slowly creep back into the MVP standings as the season goes on. Just with those, I think he's averaging something like 23, 10 and 9, which is nuts, and everyone's sort of gotten used to it now. The Bulls beat the Jazz in Utah 114-107. DeRozan had 26 points, Marketing 32 points. Obviously one thing with the Chicago, while we're here, they struggle. Vucevic struggles defending perimeter bigs who can shoot the ball from deep. That's just a brief little insight. The Suns beat the Kings in Sacramento 122-117. Booker had 44 points on the way to his big week. Monk had 30 points. The Pacers beat the Lakers by 1 point on the buzzer. Halliburton 24 points, 80, 25 and 13. Now with that game, it was obviously interesting to watch because the LA, I think they're up by about 17 points. It wasn't halfway through the fourth, but it was early in the fourth, and then everything went wrong for them, and they ended up losing on the buzzer, a game they shouldn't have lost. Wednesday's games, so the 3 games. Knicks, they smashed the Pistons in Detroit by 30 points. Randall had 36 points on his birthday. Mavericks beat the Warriors by 3 points. Luka 41, 12 and 12. Curry 32 points. Had a chance to win late or not win tight, get caught on trouble. I think there was something like, remembering back, there were 10 travels called in that game, which is quite interesting to watch. Not fun for the game though. Clippers 118 to 112 beat Portland. Portland were actually up substantially at the end of the third quarter and let the lead slip. I think it was like 18 plus points and then managed to lose. Just being a young side without Dame Lillard able to steady the ship. No one able to go get a quick bucket. We thought Grant and Simons might be able to pull that up, but they didn't. That's sort of Wednesday's games. Thursday's games, there were 13 games after only 3 games on a Wednesday. The Cavs beat the Sixers by 28 points. The Hawks beat the Magic in Orlando. Young had 30 points and 14 assists. The Celtics beat the Heat behind 49 points and 11 rebounds from Tatum. The Nets beat the Wizards. KD had 39, KP 20, which is Porzingis, 27 points and 19 rebounds. The Bucks beat the Knicks in New York. Giannis had 37 points, 13 rebounds and 7 assists. The Wolves, they beat the Grizzlies without Towns. Edwards had 29 points. Morant and Brooks were ejected towards the end of the game, but the result was already sealed. That didn't affect the result. They obviously didn't like some calls that they weren't getting, so they obviously whinged to the ref. The Pelicans beat the Raptors. Zion had 33 points and 10 rebounds. Really starting to see Zion come into his own, both in the offensive end and defensive end, as well as his passing. Everyone's sort of noted him down as an unexpected passer, but he can sort of dish the ball out to his teammates. The Thunder beat the Spurs after being down early. Vassell had 25 points on San Antonio's side. Nuggets beat the Rockets by 20 points. Jokic, another near triple-double. The Suns beat the Bulls by 19 points. Booker had 51 points. So as we said, he was on his way to an impressive week. The Jazz beat the Clippers. Clarkson had 33 points. The Kings beat the Pacers by 20 points. And then the Lakers beat the Blazers. James had 31, 7 and 8 along the way as well. Friday, only 1 game. It was a Pistons versus the Mavericks. Not too interesting a game, but it actually turned out quite interesting because the Pistons beat the Mavericks in OT. Luke had 35 points, 10 assists. Bogdanovic had 30 points. So quite an interesting game there. Only 1 game, which meant Saturday, 11 games on the roster or on the list. The Hornets beat the Wizards by 1 point. Rozier had 25 points. Beal had 33 points. The Hawks beat the Nuggets without Young or Capela. Murray had 34 points. As we'll mention a bit later on, there's something going on in Atlanta between Young and Coach McMillan. Heat beat the Celtics in OT. Butler returned 25 points and 15 rebounds. Brown had 37 points. Tatum wasn't great after being super in his last game. The Nets beat the Raptors. Irving had 27 points, And then the Cavs beat the Magic. Mobley, another big game, 19 points and 13 rebounds without Allen at the moment. The Lakers beat the Bucks in what was the game of the season, I reckon, so far. AD had 44 points and 10 rebounds. Giannis had 40 points and 7 rebounds. That was a high-scoring game. It was 130 plus each, which was super to watch. And what really stood out to me was how the defensive intensity on both sides, but then the offensive ability of both teams, because both teams were playing high-octane defense that would turn into offense, but then it was just back and forth, back and forth. If you do get a chance, I'd just go back and watch that game at any time. It was just a show of some of the world-class players we have in the league at the moment. The Grizzlies beat the Sixers. Jackson Jr., 22 points and 9 rebounds. Embiid, 35, 11 and 8. We'll cover off a bit about Embiid later, about what's impressing us about him, while obviously his teammates are out. Pelicans beat the Spurs in San Antonio. Zion had 30 points. Vassell, 25 points. The Rockets beat the Suns in Phoenix. As we said, Booker's had a huge week, 41 points. Jalen Green had 30 points, but obviously a loss for Booker. So they lost by 1 point to the Rockets in Phoenix. So they actually had a home loss, which is quite astounding. The Jazz beat the Pacers by 20 points. Markkanen had 24 points and 13 rebounds. He's shown some consistency of late. And then the Warriors beat the Bulls. Clay, 26. Big Vooch, 23 and 11. Sunday had 7 games on the schedule. The Mavericks beat the Knicks. Luka had 38 and 7. Hardaway had 8 threes. Obviously the early game of the day. The Kings beat the Clippers by 20 points. Obviously the Clippers are still without their main guys. The Bucks beat the Hornets. No Giannis, no Middleton, no Holiday. Rozier had 26 points, but the Bucks obviously still won in Charlotte. The Raptors beat the Magic. Siakam had 26 points. OG Anunoby had 32 points. The Thunder beat the Wolves in Minnesota. SGA, another 30-point game, 33 points. Russell, 27 points. And Gobert Rudy ejected for tripping. And it was a blatant trip as well. And he has that in him, to be honest. We were actually backing in Gobert for a big game, but then he goes and does that. Obviously, see you later. The Warriors beat the Rockets by 19 points. Wiggins had 36 points. And then the Blazers beat the Jazz in Utah on the first leg of a back-to-back. Simons, 45 points. Grant had 30-plus points as well in an impressive win for Portland. Hopefully that gets them back on track. Monday had 8 games. So obviously today, this afternoon, this morning, whatever you want to call it. Pelicans beat the Nuggets. Jokic had 32, 16, and 9. Not enough. Alvarado, 38 points and 8 threes. Zion, 25 points. And the Nuggets, just one thing about the Nuggets that we can quickly cover off is they just can't stop runs. So, I mean, looking back at a little bit of that game where we sort of saw them turn the ball over 4 times in a row, miss a shot, get a shot blocked, and then all of those possessions going down the other end, the Pelicans scored, and that was the difference in the game because that's when the Pelicans jumped out and they kept that lead. So that's something to watch with Denver, especially on the road. The Suns beat the Spurs big. Ayton had 25 points and 10 rebounds. The Celtics beat the Nets in a low-scoring game, making it 8 in a row against Brooklyn. Brown had 34 points and 10 rebounds. KD had 31 points. The Grizzlies beat the Pistons. Morant had 33 points. Jaren Jackson Jr. another 20-plus point game. Knicks beat the Cavs 91-82, so a low-scoring, what looked like a boring game. We probably won't go back and watch that one, to be honest. Mitchell and Brunson had 23 points each. Lakers beat the Wizards. 80 had 55 points and 17 rebounds. Porzingis had 27 points. And then the Kings beat the Bulls, but Levine on the losing side had 41 points. And then the Blazers beat the Pistons. What was impressive about Portland that we'll cover off is their starting 5 and combining for 101 points. And 3 of their starting 5, obviously Grant, Lillard, Simons, 20-plus points each. Something we watched Lillard cover off the other day while he was interviewing while Portland were playing was he mentioned that the Portland now have 3 scorers. So in the past, they've had CJ and Dame, and that's been it, and they've had some guys around them that can shoot and do that. But they've got 3 people or scorers that can go get their buckets at any time, and then they've got pieces around them coming off the bench that are super athletic and defenders and everything like that can sort of piece in as they go along. So expect Portland to be there towards the end of this season. That is week 7 reviewed and done. Obviously, we'll cover off a bit more of the player and team consistencies, which is now next. So obviously, we got the Atlanta Hawks. So Murray, 6+ assists in his last 3 games. Capela, 11+ rebounds in his last 6 games. And as we mentioned, that sort of Young and Coach McMillan drama, which who knows the in-depths of it. But Young he's had some big games, he's had some light games. It just looks like there's a bit too much going on in Atlanta, lacking consistency, trade rumors, all that sort of stuff. We don't want to cover it off, but those are the stats there. So Murray and Capela, Murray 6+ assists, Capela 11+ rebounds. Boston, so Tatum's had 28+ points in 6 of his last 7 games and 8+ rebounds in 6 of his last 7 games. Brown, 25+ points in his last 8 games. And then 7+ rebounds in his last 3 games. Tatum and Brown both get to the line a lot. And with their dribble moves and drives, they're seen there a lot. Brown also has a super good head fake. And because he has such a high release jumper, it gets him to the free throw line quite a bit. So watching the Celtics, and we'll actually cover them off in our deep dive about how well they're playing and how they're shooting. But that's a bit of insight on Tatum and Brown obviously getting to the free throw line and where they get the majority of their points by attacking the ring. The Brooklyn Nets, so Durant 31+ points in 5 of his last 6 games, and then Durant 5+ rebounds and 5+ assists in his last 9 games. As you would have seen, going along with the consistencies in our obviously email recommendations today, we had Durant over 27.5, 5+ rebounds, 5+ assists, which is paying $255. So that's a nice little juicy one there to maybe go back to the well with. Irving, 20+ points in 7 of his last 8 games. Also 5+ assists in his last 3 games. So obviously no Ben Simmons at the moment, so Irving's handling the ball a lot more and running the point. A few team consistencies that will go on a bit later about how they've improved, but they've actually won 4 of their last 5 games, all at home, which is something they struggled to do last season. And they've actually been defending well, 220 total points and under in 4 of their last 5 games, which obviously attributes to a lot of wins as well. The Charlotte Hornets, Rozier, 22 plus points in his last 4 games and 4 plus assists in his last 7 games. And Kelly Oubre Jr., we touched on it in our recommendations the other day when we had him for 22 plus points. But he's had 20 plus points in 6 of his last 7 games. And what's impressive about him at the moment is that he's taken on that second scorer, or Rozier will go to the bench and he'll be the first scorer. Them two working well as a tandem while they wait for players to get back in or players to improve, or who really knows what's going on with the Hornets at the moment. But all we know is those 2 players are scoring super well at the moment for their side. The Chicago Bulls, 20 plus points, which is Zach LaVine in his last 5 games, obviously 41 last game. The Bulls have lost 4 of their last 5 games, so once again an inconsistent team, and as we touched on earlier in the season, we're just not sure how they're going to track throughout the rest of the year. The Cleveland Cavaliers, so Mobley a double-double in 4 of his last 5 games. Obviously, Jarrett Allen being out a lot of games is helping him there. They've actually lost 7 of their last 8 road games, so not a good road team, but a very good home team. And their last 4 road losses have been by 10-plus points. So that's the Cavs away on the road. Look at their opponent's minus line. But on the flip side, they've won their last 6 home games and all of them by 10-plus points. So, a team that's really good at home and then really bad on the road. So something to look at with the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Dallas Mavericks, Luka, of course he's in here, 30-plus points in his last 3 games, 8-plus assists in 7 of his last 8 games. Dinwiddie, 15-plus points in 5 of his last 6 games. Hardaway Jr., 22-plus points in his last 3 games. And a couple little insights. Another team that home and road differential is completely different. Someone described it good the other day. Analyst described it well the other day with their home and road differential. So at home, they're very good defensively and they shoot the ball really well. Whereas going out on the road, they're the opposite. So their defense struggles, but then their players don't shoot well. So the margin for error, unless Luka is scoring really well, is a big difference. So having a look at them at home compared to on the road, I believe they've got the Suns tomorrow, which we'll go through a bit later, and seeing how they defend the Suns, I guess. But what we've seen of late with them when they win is their shooters are hitting shots, as you can see with Hardaway Jr., 22 plus points in his last 3 games, and Dinwiddie also scoring well. Wood also had a big game the other night, which attributed to another win. The Denver Nuggets, so Jokic, 24 plus points in 5 of his last 7 games, and then 8 plus assists in his last 4 games. Murray, 18 plus points in his last 5 games, obviously 20 plus points in 4 of those 5. Obviously not today though. But they've lost their last 2 road games, but they've been a bit up and down as well. They play very well at home. And shoot the ball very well at home and blow teams out at home. But then on the road, they're 50-50. As we said, there's swings and roundabouts with them that's costing them games. The Golden State Warriors, 25 plus points for Steph Curry in 3 of his last 4 games, and then 5 plus assists in his last 5 games. Thompson, 20 plus points in 5 of his last 7 games, so obviously shooting well, since a few rumors came out about him not shooting well. So he turned that around. The Lakers, who will cover up a little bit more in depth in the next topic, but LeBron James, 28 plus points in 4 of his last 5 games, 7 plus rebounds in his last 6 games. And then Davis, 55 and 44 points in his last 2 games. He's had 25 plus points in his last 9 games and 12 plus rebounds in 9 of his last 10 games. So I guess that's where all those wins are coming from those two playing very well. Memphis, Morant had 27 plus points in 4 of his last 6 games, and then 6 plus assists in 6 of his last 7 games. Jarrett Jackson Jr., 20 plus points in 6 of his last 7 games. The Grizzlies have won 4 of their last 5 games. And a bit of an insight, direct correlation between Morant's assists and Jarrett Jackson Jr.'s scoring. Simple as that. Obviously, him being able to drive to the cup, whether JJJ is spreading the floor or he's down low for the dump off, both have worked well. Miami Heat, bam, 23 plus points in his last 4 games, and then Hero, 5 plus rebounds in his last 5 games. That's all to cover off for the Heat, just because obviously Butler's coming back in. Milwaukee Bucks, Giannis, 30 plus points in his last 6 games, and then 4 plus assists in his last 9 games. His next game's against the Magic. We'll be looking at his assists over in that one with the length down low of the Magic. Bobby Portis, 8+ rebounds in his last 6 games. And the Bucks have won 4 of their last 5 games as well. And it was described well with them and Boston. They're up atop of the East at the moment, and no one's sort of matching them. As well as out West, no one's really, I mean, you've got Phoenix and then you've got New Orleans potentially, sort of matching them up the top of the conferences there. The Pelicans, while we're there, Zion 25+ points in his last 3 games, and then also 4+ assists in his last 5 games. OKC, SGA, 30+ points in 9 of his last 10 games. And then the Suns, we've got Booker had 20, 41, 51, 44. As we mentioned in the review, he had quite a big week. Ayton's had 25+ points in 4 of his last 6 games. And then 10+ rebounds in 8 of his last 9 games. And the team consistencies there, the Suns have won 7 of the last 8 games, but they were in quite a big homestand. They play Dallas tomorrow, so it'll be interesting to see. Probably when you potentially listen to this, they might have already played them, or they're about to play them. The Philadelphia 76ers, Embiid's had 30+ points in 6 of his last 7 games, and then 6+ assists in his last 7 games. And quickly want to touch on Embiid there, because we mentioned it earlier in our review. What's really impressive is his assist numbers. So obviously they're feeding it to him in the high post or low block. And then he's either making a quick decision to score or he's passing out to shooters. And with Melton and Milton shooting really well, and then also Tobias Harris cutting through the lane, he's making the right decision there. So look at Embiid's assist numbers as well, while Harden and Maxey are still out. And even if they do come back, look at his assist numbers still. They might drop a little bit because the usage will decrease. The Portland Trailblazers, Grant, 25+ points in his last 6 games. Simons, 22+ points in 11 of his last 13 games. We'll also touch on them as well on their scoring depth. Obviously, with Dame Lillard coming back now, we saw it against the Pacers today that they were they had super consistent scoring on the floor at all times, if that makes sense. They always had someone or 2 or 3 players on the floor that could go get a bucket, as well as Nurkic screening and rolling for them. If they go to double, they then hit Nurkic at the high post. He then makes the right decision to shooters as well, which works really well for them, which sees Nurkic's assist numbers also increase. The Kings, they've won their last 3 games after dropping a few heading out on the road. The Spurs, they've lost their last 11 games, and 8 of those 11 losses have been by 11 points. A bit of a tongue twister there. But obviously San Antonio not playing too well at the moment. Maybe a bit of tanking, who knows. Toronto Raptors, Siakam's been back, 23+ points in his last 3 games. OG, 20+ points in 6 of his last 8 games. The Jazz, Markkanen and Clarkson, 20+ points in his last 4 games. Clarkson, 20+ points in 8 of his last 10 games. Last but not least, the Washington Wizards, Kuzma, 20+ points in 7 of his last 8 games. KP, so that's Porzingis, 20+ points in his last 5 games. As we always do, we will put them in the show notes, but I guess a good thing to touch on is that we obviously have a lot more stats and consistencies and insights that obviously go out to members, but that's just a good sort of breakdown of what we sort of give out in regards to sort of points, rebounds, assists, consistencies, insights, that sort of jazz anyway. Topic 4, so we've obviously selected a few teams to deep dive a bit into. So we've got the Celtics, the Nets, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Pelicans to sort of jump into. We'll touch on the Celtics quickly. Obviously 19-5. We did touch on them the other week as well. But they've won 15 of their last 17 games and then 6 of their last 7 on the road as well. 226 plus total points in 10 of their last 11 games, which is super impressive. And we already sort of touched on it, but their field goal percentage is sitting just at or just under 50% from the field, which is why they have so many points being scored. But then it's their 3-point percentage, which is above 40%, which is unreal. So they're shooting a lot of threes and they're shooting a high percentage from the field, which means other teams need to keep up. So look at other teams' 3-point field goal makes, guys who obviously can shoot the 3 but don't shoot as often, but just because they have to keep up with Boston's offense, other teams want to score, and it's sort of, that's what I guess translates into Boston's wins. And you can see without even Marcus Smart today, they still went well against the Nets out on the road as well. So with obviously Brown, Tatum, and then you've got White shooting the 3, and then you've got Brogdon coming in, who's a high percentage shooter, and then Horford can dot out and shoot a three as well. And then you've got Grant Williams. You've just got a raft of shooters there, and that's what will take them through towards the end of the season anyway. The Brooklyn Nets, as we mentioned, they obviously played Boston today, but they're sitting at 13-12. They're 7-3 of their last 10 games. They've actually won 4 of their last 5 games, all at home, but it's a good sign anyway. The Nets are actually holding teams under points, so 220 total points in 104 of the last 5 games. And what's improved for them over the last few games has been their defense and shooters shooting better. It's a simple formula. When Joe Harris shoots it well, when Steph Curry shoots it well, when Irving shoots it well, when Durant's hitting his mid-range as he always does, the team functions better. Even with Simmons out at the moment, when he comes back in, once those shooters are shooting better, it'll be lights out for other squads. The Warriors, so we mentioned a few consistencies there. They've won 5 of their last 6 games. They've won their last 10 home games. And they're averaging 123 plus points for across their last 6 games. So a couple of differences that have been made. Thompson and Wiggins shooting a lot better, and guys around them shooting better. But the big difference defensively has been Draymond Green working with the bench unit, playing with the bench unit. So he obviously starts the game, comes off a bit earlier, and then he plays with that bench unit defensively. So obviously a lot of younger guys in that bench unit. So Green obviously directing him and helping him out has made a big difference in their win-loss column of late. And obviously then Curry's been playing super well, but he's been consistent. But it's guys around that need to step up, and they have done so, which is formulated to wins. The LA Lakers, another team that sort of jumped up. They've won 5 of their last 6 games and 8 of their last 10 games. 231 plus total points in their last 5 games, and then 128 plus points in 4 of their last 5 games. Now, putting it on insights, they're starting to find their identity. Now, they've been built on defense the last few years, but with the age of some of those guys in the team and the passing ability they have, they can all play defense, but when they get out and transition and run, that's when they're at their best. So, you've got LeBron, who's the best transition player in the world, and has been for a long time. If there gets a turnover or AD gets a block shot, AD, once again, another one of the better defensive players in the league. If he gets a block shot, get out and run. You got Westbrook, who's coming on the bench unit. His assists are up of late, but same sort of thing. He is a good player when he gets out and run. You got Lonnie Walker, Troy Brown Jr., who can shoot the 3. Other guys, Schroeder, who can run and get out and transition. You've got guys in that team who can get out and transition and run. So that's why you're seeing that points increase. And if they can keep that up on the defensive end that turns to offense, they're going to see more wins, and they're going to be potentially in contention as long as they can all stay healthy and AD and LeBron can play at that level. It's a big if, but, or maybe. But while they're all playing, I like the Lakers to keep that roll going. The New Orleans Pelicans, very similar in the way they are very good defensively, and they've found their identity as well. They're 15-8. They've won their last 3 games by 15 plus points, and they've won 9 of the last 11 games. And they're actually doing it without CJ McCollum for most of it, and also without Ingram. But they're doing it through defense to offense. So whether that's Alvarado, whether it's Jones, who's currently out, but whether it's Murphy, whether it's Zion, Valanciunas down low, Hernan Gomez, whoever it is playing on that team, it seems they're buying in defensively, and then they're getting out and transition and going. You've got Zion, one-on-one player, can beat anyone at the ring. So it's interesting to see anyway, but they're obviously playing super well at the moment, and look for them to keep on rolling, especially then you add in CJ and Ingram to the mix, and we'll see how that keeps on building for them. That's a bit of a deep dive into those guys. We won't include those areas in the show notes, but sort of reach out if you want any more discussions about any specific teams. Happy to discuss and dive into it. Topic 5, the Week 8 preview. So Tuesday, where we're looking at the Celtics at the Raptors, so Tatum and Brown versus Siakam and co. The Heat at the Grizzlies, so Ja versus Butler. And then the Suns at the Mavs, Booker versus Luka. 2 high scorers, one high octane offense and very good defense versus one very good defense and very slow offense. Be interesting to see who keeps the pace in that one. Wednesday, the Lakers at the Cavs. So LeBron, if healthy, returns to Cleveland again. Always a good show there. He loves to put on a show when he heads back to his hometown. And then the Mavericks at the Nuggets. Mavericks obviously coming off a back-to-back, but it's Luka versus Jokic, which will be a good show. Thursday, Hawks at the Knicks. So if Trae Young does play, he's in Madison Square Garden. We know the history between him and Madison Square Garden fans and Knicks fans. That'll be an interesting one to watch. The Wizards at the Bulls. So Bill versus DeRozan if healthy. KP versus Vooch. The Warriors at the Jazz and the Celtics at the Suns, so a few good games on the Thursday. And then the Friday, the Clippers at the Heat. Hopefully we see Leonard and Paul George back. They were listed questionable the other day, but haven't ended up playing. And the Nuggets at the Blazers, that'll be a good contest. Two very good scoring teams coming up against one another. You got Jokic if Porter Jr. is healthy, but you got Murray, and then you got KCP and Gordon versus Grant, Nurkic, Lillard, and Simon. So a few good matchups there. Saturday's games, the Hawks at the Knicks, so Young and Murray versus KD and Irving. The Lakers at the Sixers, so AD versus MB, two very good big men, potentially competing for an MVP this season with the way AD's playing of late. The Suns at the Pelicans, so Zion versus Booker. The T-Wolves at the Jazz, depending on the T-Wolves' health and their form. The Bucks at the Mavericks, so Giannis versus Luka once again. It's already happened, but they love playing against each other. Sunday's games, the Nets at the Pacers. Just a quick note there, KD loves playing against the Pacers, so quickly write that one down and go, KD, big game against the Pacers. Thunder at the Cavs, SGA versus Mitchell, good contest there. Mavs at the Bulls, Luka in Chicago versus DeRozan and Levine. Celtics at the Warriors, Tatum and Brown versus Clay and Curry, super matchup there. Jazz at the Nuggets, Wolves at the Blazers. And then Monday, the Suns at the Pelicans, round 2, then Bulls at the Hawks. That is the round 8, week 8 preview. Moving into Tuesday's game, so tomorrow's games, obviously this being shot on a Monday evening. We'll jump into it here. So we have the Clippers at the Hornets. So currently the Hornets are 230, the Clippers 166, the Lions -3. That's on Bet365. Over under is 217. I wouldn't be looking at any head-to-head or line in this one. If I quickly shoot to the lineups as well, they are not up yet. But health-wise, it really does depend who's playing for the Clippers. But we like Oubre Jr. 20-plus points and Rozier 20-plus points, 4 assists. Could be a good little multi there if we put that quickly together while we're chatting about it. So just logging in milestones. So 2020, and then because I'm on Bet365, they can only do 5 assists or 3 assists. You got 275 for 2020 and 3, or if you want 5 assists, it's 325. Or if you jump onto Sportsbet, if they have hopefully those markets open, we can have a look at what it's like on there. 2020 and then 4. You got $3 on Sportsbet for that little combo there. So that's a nice little combo we like. Moving into the next game, which is the Bucks at the Magic. The Bucks -9.5, 122 head-to-head, over-under 225. We like that over-under. Look at over on that one. Bucks love to score the ball. The Magic like to get up and down the floor, but that -9.5 should hold strong for the Bucks. Also looking at potentially Giannis's assists over in that one. It's currently sitting at 5.5 for 225. If Middleton's playing, he's not listed there at the moment, but if Middleton's playing, Giannis will dish to Holiday, dish to Middleton, and get his assists up there, especially with the bigs of the Magic guarding the paint. So you got Bol in the middle, you got Wagner, you got Banchero, depending on the other guys' health for the Magic. There's a lot of length down low. The Celtics versus the Raptors. The Celtics currently 183, -1.5, over-under is 227. I would stay away from the over-under just because games in Toronto can be 50-50 in that space. But depending on health, there's no player markets up at the moment for that one. The Thunder at the Hawks, so depending on who's playing for the Hawks, the Hawks currently listed at -6.0. Over-under is 231.5. I'd be looking at that over-under. It depending on if Trey plays and Murray plays and Capela plays. Looking at that. The Heat at the Grizzlies. So the Grizzlies currently 176 -2. Over-under 226.5. I'd stay away from the over-under just because it's the Heat. But looking at sort of player markets, there's none open as of yet. The Sixers versus the Rockets at the Rockets. I'd be staying away from a line in this one. I'd be looking at something like a Joel Embiid with Sixers head-to-head, or a Joel Embiid assist points combo. that would be good in that space. The Suns, Mavericks. The Mavericks are 160 because, well, they're at home. The Suns are 245. We see value in the 245 of the Suns coming into Dallas. But we'll do a bit more insight and reviewing to see who's playing. Obviously, the Suns are coming off a back-to-back, but they played the Spurs and they rested a lot of guys late in that game. So really, they only played half a game there. The Pacers at the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, the Pacers lost big again to the Blazers, and they play a back-to-back. Minus 9.5 at the moment. That minus 9.5 looks good to us. So just quickly, if you were to combine a minus 9.5 with a minus 9.5 of the Bucks, as well as a Suns head-to-head, 892, or just a 364 combining the Golden State Warriors and Milwaukee Bucks to win 10 plus each. That'd be probably our lines of the day, if that makes sense. 364 doubles on Bet365. But that's a quick overview into, I guess, what we're looking at tomorrow. Later in the week, those games, I will see if I can have a look. No, there's no games up for Wednesday as of yet. But that gives you a good look into the games for tomorrow and for the rest of the week. Feel free to like, follow, and subscribe to Sports Tips by Jellyman on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Obviously, like, follow, subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts as well, or wherever you're listening to this. But that is all, folks, for Monday, the 5th of December, episode 8 of NBA by Jellyman. Thank you for tuning in.